All right, here we go. Straight into the battle. Looks like we're going to be looking over the shoulder of Shintaro, so we get to see all that combo action really going off. And of course, these opening hands, lots of lands for that Kethis combo deck versus the double Thoughtseize with no black mana.
Yeah, I'll probably see that hand go away. Land-heavy hands are fine, though, which is why we see the keep here. It's essentially, you're not in a rush, right? It's not Gruul aggro. You're going to play a lot of turns this game.
Absolutely, and this hand ended up very good on the mulligan. We've got the Thoughtseize and Fatal Push. Fatal Push able to hit pretty much everything in the Kethis combo deck.
Probably its best target is something like a Lazav. Even something like Diligent Excavator, if it's early enough, is worth it.
Like this one, which could have come down on turn 2.
Yeah. Probably, yeah, Fiddle Fit the Loss goes away because Excavator doesn't generate value.
There's a Kethis, and Kethis is able to take on the identity of any creature in the graveyard. And our first Uro of the day, entering the battlefield, gaining 3 life, drawing a card, and sacrificing itself. And since it left the battlefield, Fatal Push did not need that extra Revolt activation, but we got it anyway.
Yeah. That said here, I mean, Lazav the Multifarious is going to be really nice here because, you know, both of you are essentially low on cards, but, well, actually, I say low on cards. It's just because between Growth Spiral and Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath, Zachary has essentially emptied the hand as fast as possible. Really now looking for a threat, although Castle Lochwain can be quite nice, you know, to make sure the cards keep flowing. Try to get those final spells for Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath. Was that Fabled Passage enough, actually?
Yes, it was. That is enough to fill the graveyard, and we are seeing Uro entering the battlefield, escaped from the graveyard. So now there's a 6/6. You mentioned before that if Kiihne is able to get a big creature to stick to the board, he might have this game.
Yeah, big creature, because that was the thing, is all that interaction wouldn't have meant much, except now we have an Uro, and that's going to keep the cards flowing, that's going to put the pressure on, and this Lazav is going to have to do a lot of work. An incredible amount of work.
Yes, Lazav being a 1/3 on his own, and he's able to transform, if he were on the battlefield, into a slightly different 1/3.
Yeah.
Not quite enough power or toughness to survive against Uro. And we see Kiihne now with a Growth Spiral and Hydroid Krasis in hand. We could see some more cards drawn, maybe a bit more ramping, but honestly with that 7 lands already on the battlefield, don't really need to focus on ramp.
Well, there's this question, right? Yeah, I like this. You do it for 4, which puts enough pressure anyways. It's not going to be an additional card, and that way you increase your chances of getting a land, which helps you cast maybe a 2-drop interaction spell you draw, or a Growth Spiral and keep the cards flowing. Shintaro deciding to essentially, you know, be mana efficient, right? The Lazav wouldn't do much this turn, so instead you use that mana to cycle a Triumph.
And there's the first Mox Amber and an Emery. Emery's going to fill up the graveyard a little bit if she hits the board. There's also the potential for Gigantha to come down here, but as a 5/5, Gigantha, the Wellspring, is not going to contest with Uro.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see Gigantha this turn. It's, as you point out, it's just a 5/5 versus a 6/6, and it does generate a lot of mana. And I like this. You put the Kethis in the graveyard because you essentially have Kethis with Lazav. The idea here, I think, of leading with Lazav was essentially, I don't think there were enough cards in the graveyard to escape an Uro, but that might have been the idea initially, right? With the Mox Amber in hand. Decided, I think, to go though for the Lazav plus Emery here, just because it essentially deploys 2, not must-answer cards, but cards that can essentially get towards that key combo turn and help Shintaro win next turn, because with this pressure, Shintaro has to win next turn.
Oh yeah, there's another 10 damage swinging in next turn, 4 of which is in the air.
Ooh, that was a great pickup. Till's End, pretty much exactly what's needed against this combo deck. The problem, though, is... Oh, and Eliminate, perfect.
Oh,
I was going to say
Eliminate,
yeah, Kethis, but yeah. Whew.
This Eliminate, able to take out the Lazav, able to take out Emery. Emery, we're actually just going to see chump blocking here. This is an attempt to stay alive. But Tail's End is brutal against this deck, not just because it can counter any of the legendary cards, but you can also counter the abilities that would otherwise win the game.
Blocking with Emery there was, Eliminate plus Tail's End was just perfect here, so this game is going to end that way. But I was gonna mention blocking with the Emery was actually pretty smart because the idea was to just copy Kethis, right? And that's the extra legendary card in the graveyard. And then you'd have more in the
graveyard. Yep, but no, we're going to see Shintaro Ishimura conceding here for the first game. And while they're sideboarding, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. So now we get to see what each player sideboarded in for Game 2. Looks like we've got... Oh, with those Narsets being brought in? That's what you had expected, right, Eduardo?
Yeah, I'm actually surprised to not see Narset brought in and to see Negate. Honestly, I'm very surprised to see Negate. It's a creature combo deck, so I know there are spells that can matter. Tamiyo specifically can be pretty relevant. You see Sky Sovereign just because it's a good answer to Nissa. No, I'm just honestly surprised. I genuinely thought Narset was going to be a decent option to kind of fight any kind of mid-range value engine with Uro and to get to key interactive cards of which there's one or two copies of. I do like getting rid of the Krasis and the Extinction event though, so that for sure had to come out, I feel. And A for Gust is very conditional. It is good against Kethis and Uro, but not great against the rest of the deck.
I'm very happy to see Vraska Golgari Queen coming in on Shintaro's side, being able to take out Hydroid Krasis and Uro with the minus ability. And these are two very strong opening hands. We've got Thoughtseize, Eliminate, and Scavenging Ooze. That is interaction with the hand, the board, and the graveyard. And Shintaro getting Thoughtseized on turn 1. Not a good feeling. Nobody likes to have their hand looked at and picked apart by their opponent.
Yeah. Looking at how this is, take the Noxious Grasp because it's one of the, if not the only answer to a Scavenging Ooze. So you're probably going to have ways to essentially... Oh, that was really nice, actually. That Uro.
Yeah.
I mean, there is an Eliminate.
Might become a very inexpensive Uro if he weren't eliminated right here.
Yeah. You could have waited, try to tempt Shintaro to essentially spend free mana to make it Uro, I think, here. But I can understand just wanting to get rid of it. But yeah, I believe you can wait in that specific circumstance.
I would have liked to see a 3-mana transformation into Uro and a swing, but that was not in the cards. A Growth Spiral and Scavenging Ooze over in Keen's hand. We're going to see that Scavenging Ooze come down immediately and exile from the graveyard.
That was what I was looking for. That 5th land means that Sky Sovereign can come down and answer the Scavenging Ooze.
Scavenging Ooze will now only be able to pick apart one of those Uros before it's removed from the game. Sky Sovereign is a vehicle, probably the only vehicle you see often in historic play, but it has a very neat enter to battlefield and on attack ability where it does 3 damage to any target.
Yeah, and here you see a pass because essentially Sky Sovereigns, even if there was a creature that comes into play, you take 6 damage, it's not so bad. So that's why you see passing the turn with Negate and Growth Spiral up. And it's going to look really good against this Tamiyo. Because if Maelstrom Pulse was played and Tamiyo had hit play, I think Shintaro would have been able to take over this game easily. As is, it's a really difficult decision. And putting the Gigantha in hand is the correct play, but it is not actually that simple a decision. Tempting just because Zachary passed the turn here with free cards. So really heads up play, I think, from Shintaro there.
So we're seeing an end-step Growth Spiral, no lands hit. And Maelstrom Pulse taking out the Sky Sovereign.
Right. Here the idea of going for Gigantha is it generates a ton of mana, like a lot of mana. So if you're running Temi, like the way this play pattern works is very typical, right? As your Sultai opponent plays some kind of 2 or free drop on their turn and keeps 2 mana up, you know they have some kind of interactive spell.
Another Thoughtseize. Removing Tamiyo. Tamiyo is a great piece at filling the graveyard and recurring pieces from the graveyard. She pairs excellently with Uro.
This is really nice. Mox Amber plus Diligent Excavator might be enough cards to escape the Uro.
And it is.
Yeah,
there
and I mean,
we go.
Yeah, you can eliminate the Uro, but you still have a Diligent Excavator in play. So that's, putting 2 cards now. So it's only a matter of time. Plus, you still get value. And this is kind of what I alluded to earlier, is without a clock, the Sultai deck is going to lose. It's just inevitable, right? You're playing 1-for-1 interaction, but your opponent has card advantage, and you don't as much as your opponent. You're matching on the Euros. You cut out the Krasis, you have even less actual raw cards. So now you're going to be behind. And look at this, right? 2 negates.
Two negates and Kiihne with the oops.
Yeah. I know. Like, look, you're playing negates versus a creature combo deck. This is good. This is bound to happen. Like,
all right, and he is going into game 3. He is not going to sit for getting beat up by Gigantha. So we're going to take another 30-second break while we wait for these players to do their sideboarding into game 3. Okay, a couple changes being made for switching on the play and on the draw. And I want to bring up that both of these players, we are currently watching, by the way, Rivals League games. They are near the top of the pack. Shintaro has 15 points to Kiihne's 14, which puts them both in the upper echelons of their win rates.
Yeah. A lot of the matches we're watching today are actually people at the top of the league, so these matches start mattering a lot because, we talked about, league, stay in the league, relegation league. Let's just point it out. Top 4 goes to the World Championship, right? Like, these are matches to play, the Magic of the Gathering World Championship. There's a lot of them. There's a long road, but all of these matches are going to count, and they're going to count a lot when you had such a good start. And, transforming that good start into something exceptional is really what these players are looking to do.
So we're seeing a bright and early Emery. She's getting double discounts from the Soul Guide Lantern and the Mox Amber. And now that there's a legendary on the board, Mox Amber taps for blue, and Lazov enters the battlefield.
Yeah. That's a nice double spell turn. At least there is, Fatal Push plus Eliminate. But even then, that's cards for Uro Titan of Nature's Wrath in that can just escape. So, okay, there's a Maelstrom Pulse, but this Uro has still generated value.
Yeah, this Uro is being fed in the yard. Once Shintaro gets to 4 mana, I believe we're going to see Uro escape.
Yeah, that was why you saw that. Fatal Push end of turn made sense, right? You might as well get rid of the Lazav. But also why we saw Eliminate on Emery was the Mox Amber can't generate mana, so in that manner you get to stop the Uro from coming back. There's no way that Kiihne could have known that there wasn't an extra green source. I think it was just heads up to get rid of Emery before it could generate value or mana for Uro.
And we saw a check over the graveyard there. There are 7 cards in the graveyard, which is plenty to escape Uro.
Yeah, so just a question here of doing it or not. It's really hard for me to see an alternative play. You could argue for Vraska Golgari Queen here, but that runs into the negate that you suspect might be there. Tail's End. Uro does run into Tail's End as well, but that's kind of a card you're going to run into at some point. So I kind of like just running the Uro because there's only so much that can go wrong. An Eliminate and a Fatal Push already got played, so there's probably less actual removal.
Now we're seeing a tricky choice be made. Which card do you keep in the graveyard? Having Kethis to recur any of those legendaries, Emery, Lazav, Vraska, Tashar. Tashar you can use to do some interesting graveyard recursion as well, but you have to get him back to the battlefield first. And we saw Emery kept in the graveyard. There was a little bit of decision between that and Vraska. Do you think Shintaro kept the Emery because there's another Vraska in hand?
Yeah, that would definitely be one of the reasons. The other thing is you generally want to keep a creature because you have Lazav, so that can, target a creature, whereas only Tamiyo can get back kind of any card. And you have to leave legendaries first, and then ideally legendary creatures. Obviously, in a vacuum, if the card is extremely powerful or an artifact, you might consider that. Sky Sovereign kind of hits all of the ticks, so it's generally the card you would keep as a result, because all of your reanimation cards, except for Lazav, get it.
A hover here for Vraska.
Let's see the Mox Amber go away just because there's an additional copy. Gets an extra card.
There's a land drawn that comes in untapped. We might even see Kethis come down. That's in Indotha Triome. It does come in tapped, or it's cyclable.
Yeah. There's a question here of using the mana to cycle Soul Guide Lantern. I think in a spot like
a Soul Guide Lantern because we know how many Uros there are. But here comes Nissa. Nissa's going to be doing some damage.
Yeah. We're also at the point where Kiihne has access to 7 lands soon, so you could just play Uro and then escape it right away, and there's nothing you can do with Soul Guide Lantern.
For people who don't remember the menace that is Nissa who shakes the world, she doubles the mana from all of the forest sources on your side of the board. So I see an Underground Tomb. I believe that the Triome is also a forest, and that Fabled Passage could always get a forest from the deck.
Yeah. Heads up play to essentially target the Fabled Passage because that plays around Sky Sovereign a little bit by making sure you can get mana. My gut feeling is to pulse the Nissa here, since there's not really a way for Kiihne to stop that. Even if the Fabled Passage got a land, there's nothing that's going to counter the pulse. The other line is just go Kethis and start generating value, but the graveyard's pretty sparse at the moment. I like casting Kethis just from the point of view of it's a free 4. It does very well against a free land.
Yep, it can sit there and not die while protecting Vraska. We're seeing a sacrifice of that second Mox Amber.
Yeah, Kethis also not generates mana, but obviously makes it cheaper. So this might have been a misstep. Because You need 4 mana to reanimate to escape Uro, and with Fabled Passage in play, there's no Shintaro can essentially just. Oh, sorry, yeah, you can play the land. I forget that Uro pays for itself a lot of the time, but you can do this right, like remove the graveyard right now, prevent Uro from coming back right away.
Yes, because of the way that priority works, if you waited for the Uro to hit the graveyard, there wouldn't be a window to remove it from the graveyard before it gets escaped. So had to remove the graveyard before Uro, so now there's no fuel for Uro to escape with.
Yeah. And obviously there was the Vraska to kind of deal with the Uro, but this is just much cleaner, right? And it prevents Zachary from drawing cards, and now this is just going to go very quickly between the Excavator, Fiddle Fips, the Mox Ambers. Yeah.
And that is a win for Kiihne. Or sorry, that is a win for Ishimura. My mistake.
Yeah, and
yeah, we saw just a concession there. Once that Excavator landed, and we saw the potential for a loop to continue, milling yourself, getting those Mox Ambers back, continuing to get that enter the battlefield over and over and over.